What is up, you guys? Naesam here, and I've been getting a lot of requests for a artifact trait path or route or whatever you want to call it, and I've also been looking for one, and I haven't been able to find one, so I decided I should just make my own. So at the beginning of this video I'm just going to show you like the optimal path of which way to go, which traits to get first, and then after that I'll go more in depth of why and all that. But if you just want to see which path to go, then there should be an Imgur in the description as well as me describing it in a second here, so hopefully you guys enjoy the video, and let's get started. Morning, I made this path with the idea of it being like for raids, Emerald Nightmare specifically, because that's the first raid that's going to come out. The next raid is going to be months after that, so you should have all the traits by then. And another thing is that according to Ask Mr. Robot, the amount of traits you can get before raids come out in the first 3 weeks of the expansion is going to be 20, and that actually plays out pretty perfectly with this route that I'm making, so I just wanted to let you guys know that in case anyone was here like for PvP or something. Right at the beginning we have the two obvious ones, the ones we have to get. Don't really need to talk about those, didn't need to math them out because there's no choice. The very first dilemma you have is, do I go down or do I go up? So after doing all the math, I figured that it is actually a lot more efficient, especially for raiding, to go up. And by the way, some of these tooltips are a little bugged. This one's actually 24%, not 30%. It got nerfed. But anyways, we're going to obviously go down here, and these ones are just kind of like fillers. They kind of suck, so you have to get one of them either way. So there's no point in trying to pick which one because they're both bad. So here's where I differ from a lot of people. A lot of people want to not get static overload immediately, because static overload honestly isn't all that useful in actual Emerald Nightmare because there aren't really that many heavy AoE bosses or anything. But it is extremely useful in the dungeons, Mythic Plus dungeons, and all that stuff leading up to and during Emerald Nightmare. So this is the next one I'm going to get, Static Overload, just because it's so powerful in those dungeons, and that'll help you prepare for raiding and help you raid. Because by the time you're level 110, you should probably be about here, or maybe you already have Static Overload. So that'll definitely help with preparing for raiding. Next one is going to be Molten Blast. You get 3 of those, then head straight to Power the Maelstrom. It's the first golden one. It's pretty good. It's not, I mean, none of the golden ones are amazing, but they're also not bad either, so you want to head straight to that one. And then the next dilemma here is, do we go down towards Volcanic Inferno or do we go down towards Fury of the Storms? So Volcanic Inferno actually gives more DPS than Fury of the Storms, but this trait is just so incredibly terrible that it's actually more effective to go down to Fury of the Storm. So we're going to go down here, get Lava Imbued, get Call of the Thunder, and then get Fury of the Storms, and look, now we have exactly 20 traits with 2 goldens. We have a lot of the really good traits. We basically have all the good traits except for Volcanic Inferno. And we're going into the very first raid with this. So next, do we go through these terrible traits here? This one's not that bad, but this terrible one here, or do we head over here to get the Chain Lightning and Elemental Overload damage? And the answer is it is actually worth going through this terrible Earthquake trait and this moderately good Earth and Attunement trait to go to Volcanic Inferno here. And then obviously the very last part is you're going to go back up here. You're not going to go up this way, you're going to go here, and you're going to get the Chain Lightning damage, and you're going to get the Master of the Elements, and then Shamanistic Healing, and then after that is just basically increasing your overall damage. One thing to note is that before going to the Earthquake one, if you start the raid and you find out that your guild is really struggling with healing and stuff, it is okay to get one trait in Shamanistic Healing, because what it does is when your health drops below a certain percent, it heals you for something like 150 to 200,000 health. It can be useful, it definitely, but actually getting more traits in it isn't really helpful, because all it really does is makes it heal you more often, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, that's actually pretty good, but it doesn't heal for more. So it's honestly not worth getting more than one until you absolutely have to. So that's just like a side note. If you can alter the route a little bit if you're struggling in certain areas. So now to summarize, I made this image here, and basically first you follow the red path, then the yellow path, and the green path. It's also numbers above each trait, as like this one first, this one second, this one third, you know, stuff like that. This is basically the summary image. It'll be in the description if you want to just use this instead. But just to summarize, you go obviously these two, then you go up, down through Static Lightning or Static Overload, down to Power the Maelstrom, down to Fear the Storms, back up over here to Volcanic Inferno, and then finish off from the top down to the healing one. So for everybody that just wanted to see the path, that is it. That is everything. That's a simplified version. Just a reminder that this will be in the description if you just want to copy that somewhere and use it for future reference. Obviously this is subject to change if they do some hot fixes and stuff, and I can't really edit the pictures, so you may want to check back with me or my YouTube channel if you see some changes that you think might alter the path. But by then it might be too late anyway. But regardless, I'm sure there are some of you who are wondering how I got all this information and just like want a backing on it. So that is what I'm going to explain now. So this right here is the theory crafting I did. Those of you who follow my Twitter, which is like 10 people or something, probably already saw this, maybe. But those who don't obviously haven't, unless you're on the Shaman forums and saw it in that one post. But this is basically all the different DPS increases, percents, and everything that I figured out to make this path. And for those wondering how I actually figured all this out, is I basically went to Warcraft logs and I looked at a mixture of my logs and other high-end LE Shaman logs for Emerald Nightmare, where your eye level is 835, and people had like different varying artifact traits, but I basically just subtracted what the traits did and then figured out how much of an increase they would give by looking at the damage breakdown for single target. Like for example, let's say your Lava Burst does 30% of your damage. If Molten Blast gives you 6% more Lava Burst damage, then you can figure it out from there how much of a DPS increase overall it will be. And that's basically what I did for every single trait. And that is how I figured out the path, basically. It's the summary version. It took me a couple days of revising and double checking and all that. So for those that don't want to read the whole Google Doc thing that I made, luckily that is what I'm here for, so I will be reading it for you. Basically, this whole bottom block down here only did... Let me scroll down and make sure I'm right about this. In best case scenario, like if you're doing AoEs, this whole block down here did 5% total DPS increase. The one up here did 8.5% total DPS increase for single target, and even more for multi-target because of Flame Shock. Basically the breakdown comes down to Flame Shock, the Firestorm. It gives you about a 2% DPS increase per mob that it ticks on constantly. Like on a boss where there's, let's say a council boss with 3 different bosses basically, it would be a 6% DPS increase. Elementalist, the one that decreases your lava or decreases your fire LE or storm LE cooldown by 2 seconds every time you cast Lava Burst. If you use that with Ascendance, the cooldown will end up being approximately 3.5 minutes if you're about 850 eye level. And on a 5-minute kill time, which is one of the best kill times for this talent, but that's actually pretty average for a single target boss right now, that's about a 6.5% DPS increase. Put that into reference, that is better than every single golden one. All of these are about 3%. So this is actually our best trait by far, which is strange. And then you go down here because you kind of have to. Static Overload is really good for dungeons. Oh, another thing to note about the Flame Shock one is it's really good for leveling because you're a class trinket, but I didn't really take that into account when making the path. This is all about rating. Static Overload is really good for dungeons, so I took that. Then Molten Blast is about a 1.3% DPS increase. Static Overload, we couldn't really get an exact number on that one because it's so RNG. But this is about a 1.3% DPS increase on single target. It's not great, but it basically leads to everything else, so we kind of had to take it. Power of the Maelstrom is extremely RNG, but I figured it to be about a 3% DPS increase on average. Then we head down here. The Lava Imbued is a 2% DPS increase-ish. Usually I'm pretty accurate with these. Like, I'll tell you if it's like 3.8 or something, but this one's about 2%. Call of Thunder is almost exactly a 1% DPS increase on single target. And Fury of the Storms is almost exactly a 3% DPS increase, about 3.1% DPS increase overall. This whole bottom block down here, like these 3, is about a 6% total. And then you go back up here, this whole block is about a 4.8% total. The ground trembles is literally like nothing. Absolute best case scenario in Emerald Nightmare, I got a 0.6% DPS increase from a fully upgraded ground trembles trait here, so this one's basically just a dead trait, honestly. It could be good in dungeons though, but it's not going to be great in dungeons because Earthquake just doesn't really do that much damage. Earth and Attunement, this one I got kind of confused on because, well, Binkenstein made that artifact DPS estimate thing and he said this one was like the best trait, or one of the best traits, and I got wildly different numbers. I got a 1% DPS increase out of this, and I tested it multiple times, and I repeatedly got the same results from all different shamans. So, I mean, maybe that was just his rough draft and he had an error in his math or something, but this one I'm going to go ahead and confidently say it's a small DPS increase. In Volcanic Inferno, I got a 3.8% DPS increase, but it's extremely RNG based. Let me just scroll down here. I got 51 casts on a kill. Or not on a kill, because I was doing it on target dummies. I don't actually have this on beta. I had to do on the PvP server. Out of 51 casts, I got 16 procs. And scaling that with my main character's gear at 860 eye level, that would be about 2.3 million damage if we got exactly 20% crits, which is about a crit I have. So overall, it actually procs fairly frequently. And it's really good with Ascendance because of all the extra lava bursts you're getting out, especially during burst. Usually you do Ascendance with a hero or with Elemental Mastery, so you get even more lava bursts out. And it totaled out to be about a 3.8% DPS increase, like I said earlier. But it's also very RNG based, because sometimes it didn't proc for 10 casts and sometimes it proc back to back, so that one pretty unsure about. Now we got this last little wing over here. This one increases your chain lightning damage, and I need to find it on my chart here that's really hard to read that I should have done better on. Electric Discharge, its best case scenario for Emerald Nightmare is about a 3% DPS increase, and that is on the Heart boss, whatever, it's the one in the jungle or whatever. Ilganoth or something. Overall in Emerald Nightmare there isn't a whole lot of use out of this trait. And then Master of the Elements was just a flat 2.1% DPS increase based on my mastery, which was actually higher than it should be, so this would ideally actually be lower than that. Which doesn't sound like it would be ideal, but it actually would, because you don't want that very much mastery at all, and mastery is a pretty shit stat. So that is basically the summary of every single thing and the different math I got out of it, and why I made this specific path I did. This path right here, for anyone that was curious. So I guess that's it for this video. It kind of feels weird ending it, because it feels like it's pretty early to end a video that I spent like 3 days theory crafting for, but I have nothing else to say, so I guess that's the end of this video. Thank you all for watching, as usual. Like if you liked the video, comment if you want to see something specific. Again, we have about 10 days from the time of recording this until Legion launches, so definitely if you want to see something, you have to let me know ASAP, so I know in time to actually make the video before I get really busy in Legion. If you want to see more from me, I make Elite Shaman and soon to be Shadow Priest guides, mostly. Primarily is the word I was actually going for there. So if you want to see more of that, make sure to subscribe. And again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.